Hey everyone, and welcome to Recharge the Podcast. I'm David Coe. Today, my guest is a man who spent 40 years at the head of an iconic global fashion empire that bears his name. But he's known equally for something else, using his platform to fight stigma and drive cultural change. Now, he's turned that same courage and conviction to what he calls the greatest epidemic of our time, mental health. So let's recharge with Kenneth Cole. Hey, Kenneth, how are you? And welcome to Recharge.
Hi, David. Very excited to be here. Thank you.
So I am so excited for today's conversation, Kenneth, and thank you again for being here today. And to get started, I always ask my guests one specific question when we kick this thing off, as you know. This podcast was inspired by my book, Recharge, and it was really where I asked people to think about their mental health like a phone battery. So before we start, I was going to ask you, how's your battery today and why?
So you weren't going to ask me to take out my American Express card. And I love the name. Recharge is great. It made me think that I basically operate on two speeds, and on fourth speed, full on or neutral. And so I'm full on. I'm very excited, and I'm well caffeinated, and I love the subject. I love speaking about the subject. So thank you.
Well, I am also well caffeinated today and really excited about, again, today's conversation. You know, just taking a step back and having you here, and most people know you as this iconic fashion designer, fierce activist that's out there, and you really have used your platform for quite some time to really champion causes that you're passionate about. And one of them for such a long time has been around mental health. And you were very early to this championing mental health. So I'm really personally curious on where did that passion for mental health begin for you?
It's a good question. Thank you. So, it started, I've always believed if, what I do in the ordinary course is questionably relevant, but if I can make it more meaningful, then everything I do becomes more meaningful. And if I could talk about not just what's on your body, but what's on your mind, not just what you stand in, but what you stand for, then I have elevated our relationship. And I've made it more meaningful, more substantive. And then early on in my career, I started speaking about AIDS because nobody would. And because the stigma attached to those that did was so devastating. And you were immediately presumed to be one of the at-risk communities, which is you were maybe Haitian, you were an intravenous drug user, or you were gay, and all of which were ostracized essentially in the community. And maybe because I wasn't part of those communities, it was easier for me to do what others wouldn't. And I did a campaign that spoke about the fact that few wanted to speak about, and what was on everybody's minds, but not for a few people's lips, which was AIDS. And so we started that, and it changed me in a profound way. It changed the man, changed the brand, changed the company. And I've stayed that path, and we pivoted towards mental health, just before COVID, and it's made everything so much more meaningful. And I can talk about that further if you want. But
yes,
so that kind of what's kind of set me down this road, and I think it's made the business and the brand more sustainable because heel heights, hemlines change every 15 minutes, and they're relative. And what's cool to you may not be cool to somebody else. What's cool to you today may not be tomorrow. But if I can speak about what is in fact more meaningful, then I have found that it makes what we do so much more important. I mean, these are crazy times that everybody's living through right now, and everybody's polarized, but they're not paralyzed, and there's so much we can still do. And if I could find ways to bring that voice, to what we do in the ordinary course, I think it elevates our relationship.
Well, there's so much to unpack there, Kenneth. But first off, as I just wrote down, do hemlines really change every 15 minutes?
Maybe hour and a half.
Okay. Just thank you for that clarification. I wanted to go back to something that you just brought up before COVID, which is in 2020, you founded the Mental Health Coalition, and it's clearly going very strong. And then you were kind enough to invite myself, where I first met you during your Wellbeing at Work Day, where you drew over 200 CEOs to this event and corporate leaders to really talk about kind of mental health in the workplace. And something you've noted that more Americans receive healthcare through their workplace than Medicare and Medicaid combined. Why is the workplace for you, Kenneth, such a critical background for mental health?
I think we spend a disproportionate of our waking hours at work, as you know, David, you of all people, and the master entrepreneur. And but so do I, and so many people that I know, and it's so all consuming and it's so all defining. We very often define ourselves by where we are and what we do, but it's also where healthcare is administered. So also, it's one of the few places where we deal with things objectively, a little less emotionally, and there's very clear quantitative criteria for outcomes, and there is empirical evidence that says that an allocation of resources towards health and well-being is quantitatively it improves retention, recruitment, morale, and ultimately productivity. So, and that's every CEO's job. So
Yeah.
it's a way to talk to people in quantitative terms that suggest outcomes that you can't ordinarily have those conversations.
Couldn't agree with you more there. And one thing you said where healthcare is being administered there, but are we then doing and is this part of why you put this together? Are we then doing a disservice to all these companies by putting really all this burden on them without helping them understand exactly what needs to be done? Was that one of the pillars of what you were trying to do around education for the Mental Health Coalition?
I don't think it puts any burden on them as much as it just empowers them. And I think it empowers the associates within them. And we bring resources, and all of our organizations that we work with, we basically aggregate their collective resources, and we have 500 different paths we can take you. So
Wow.
if you have some needs or some concerns, or we can help you get there. We can help you help yourself. And what's interesting is that if you said to an employer, there's that I have this need to spend certain money, if they look at it as an expense, there's no allocation. There's no availability anywhere.
So true.
But if you look at it as an investment, there's allocation everywhere. It's such a nuance, but it's so significant. And if I can show you how I can give you a 10x return on that dollar you're going to spend, and what it's going to do to your associate population and the well-being and the ultimate productivity, you're going to embrace this so quickly, because it's what we all want to do. We just don't always know how to do it.
Yeah, that couldn't agree with you more. And as we go out there as well at Com here and go speak with 5,000 of our employers that we have out there, so many times we get asked about the return. And I love how you frame that, shifting it from an expense to an investment, and then really talking about what the outcomes can lead to in terms of productivity, less absenteeism, and and more of the positive aspects rather than just thinking about it like an expense.
What got me partially down this road, truthfully, you asked about to 2020 or 2019, it'd be right before. It was actually my daughter, and she had suggested that we adopt a program that NAMI had, which was a stigma-free workplace, and to make it easier for people to deal openly with their struggles. If they can't be at work one day, they can't be productive at work one day, to be okay with that, and to learn how to be openly more accepting, and more empathetic, and ultimately to be vulnerable. And so I think it was a great exercise that we went through here. And then NAMI urged us to consider starting an initiative similar to what I had done with HIV over the years. And we realized this is so much bigger than just NAMI if we're going to do it. So we then started looking at all these other resources that are out there and available to individuals. And it's very powerful. And it's just people don't know it. So how to connect needs to resources. That's basically what we try to do. That's what I do in my fashion business. But there are some great organizations. And I think if you come to the Mental Health Coalition and somehow you can scroll through, and you'll find so many ways that you can immerse yourself and support yourself, help you help yourself, which is, I guess, we all try to figure out how to do that every day.
Absolutely. And what a better segue into the fact that it is Mental Health Awareness Month, and we're kicking this off. And your coalition is so focused on building community and you have this initiative, which is Take It Personally, that highlights how advocacy is unique to everyone's individual journey. Can you tell us more about that?
I kind of got lost in this take it personally because the acronym of which is TIP. And then initially last year, we were encouraging people for tips on how they take it personally and then share with each other because I think there's so many lessons we can learn from each other. And what do you do and how do you do it? And to what degree does it accomplish and help you go how far? So that's a social media thing and that we'd encourage people to do. But look, just to create context, 1 in 4 people, according to WHO, will have mental health struggles at different points in their lives. We say it's 4 out of 4 because if it isn't you, it's somebody you love, somebody in the family, or the community, or the workplace. But everybody gets it. Everybody is dealing with it. Everybody is dealing with it in their own way. Some do it very privately. Some share it. 2/3 of those do so in the proverbial shadows because they don't understand the ability to access a vocabulary and or tools to share their struggles with others. So they do it alone. So we urge people to reach out, to empower yourself, become a mental health advocate. And you can do that with us and to become a champion. And we'll give you the tools, we'll give you the resources, and then to reach out to any friends, family, coworkers. And it's amazing because everybody is struggling and you have it's amazing the response you're going to get when you just let people know, just show up for each other, be there in the best way you know how to be there, the best version of yourself. And people are so set off by it. And at the end of the day, connecting these resources, there's 500 different resources that people can access. So take it personally, care. At the end of the day, you'll be the biggest beneficiary.
Yes, absolutely. And I want to go back to something you said earlier on the expense and investment side of companies. And you've talked about this publicly before. And you've really talked about how companies, if they redirected some of their spend, I really appreciated this part because it doesn't get talked about enough in healthcare, which is the prevention part of it. We talk so much about intervention, and you really highlighted the part about prevention, and you would see higher returns on employee investment if you just focus more on prevention. And if it's that black and white, Kenneth, why isn't it easier for businesses just to commit dollars to this in mental health then?
I don't think they know how. And I think they immediately, the default path typically in a boardroom is looking at expenses and looking at it at an income statement. And what do I have? How much do I have? How much can I spend here? Should I spend it, to drive sales, or should I spend it to drive associates' well-being? And it's hard to quantify that. But if you can help them quantify, you can show impact. That's ultimately what we do, at work. That's what the business process is all about. And is income minus expenses yields outcomes. But if I can show you how you can make an allocation of those resources support, those that support you and support each other and themselves, it's amazing the results. The turnover in our company, the retention is 5 to 10 times those of any other company I know. And it's not because we're such a great company. We're probably not, but people want to be here because they can be themselves more easily here and they can feel like they're making a difference. Social impact is a big part of what we do. Mental Health Coalition exists here. So yes, all the associates are part of that in some ways. And it's a separate 501c3. So you can, and the people that work in the Mental Health Coalition, they have clear quantitative deliverables also. So everybody has clear goals, objectives, but everybody goes home feeling like they're doing something meaningful. Hopefully.
Well, you've heard it here, everyone. For all of you trying to convince, whether it's folks in your finance department or others, just point back to Kenneth and his retention. That's 5 to 10 times greater, which is a statistic which I absolutely want to pinpoint here. And that's something that you could bring up in terms of investing in mental health. And again, not seeing it as an expense.
But in fact, you realize you can make change.
Yes.
So it's an opportunity. There's so many ways that we can make a difference in people's lives if we are inspired and want to do it.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more, Ken. And +1 to everything you just said there, Kenneth. I want to shift a little bit to stigma and
Please.
the conversation around that, because you've said this, and again, this is another statement I couldn't agree more with, which is you said two-thirds of those who suffer do so in the shadows because they don't have the access, whether it's access to resources, and they don't have the tools to address their struggles. Why is stigma so powerful? And then two, why is it so hard to talk about mental health, especially in the workplace?
I think that is the question. That is the big question. And I think that's the challenge we've got to overcome. And I think in many cases, people feel they're alone, and they feel if they were to put themselves out there, they make themselves that much more vulnerable, and they're likely to be characterized as or outcast in some ways. But if they realize they're not, and that they're not only they're not in the minority, but that they're in the majority, and that then everything gets a whole lot easier. And what's interesting is that I sit around the table with very smart people often, and I'm almost always the least qualified person at the table. I've had no medical background, no training in psychology, no training in public health, but I'm good at convening people who are qualified. So, which is what the coalition is, and having smart conversations and open conversations and talk about what people don't want to talk about. And with AI tools now, there's so many opportunities that are becoming available every day for people to find their voice and find each other. That's part of what we're going to try to do in May, encourage people to reach out to each other, and they'll be shocked and listen and be empathetic. The best salesmen and the best listeners. And as I say in my business all the time, so just ask the questions and listen and give people a chance to speak. And it's amazing the impact you can make on people's well-being.
Well, great advice. I think if we all could listen a little bit more, we'd all be a little bit better off. So thank you for
what you say?
Giving that advice. Exactly. And I've seen this in real life as well. We've done a C-suite survey that we ran last September where we asked over 250 executives, how are you doing? Initially, they all say they're fine, about 80% of them. When you ask the question again, then about 40% of them, about half actually say, actually, I'm not doing so great. I'm pretty stressed out and overworked. And then they start to talk more about how they're dealing with anxiety or depression, workplace stress. What do you see happens when people share truthfully? And why is storytelling so powerful in fighting stigma, which we just talked about?
I think if you're in a comfortable place and you can share, what's on your mind and you can put it out into the world, I think it is so cathartic. It's amazing because it is something that we just go through every day. We ask each other how we doing. We rarely listen to the answer,
That's right.
we get on with our lives.
It's so powerful when you say those three words like, how are you and how are you really? Um, I have found myself in the beginning when I used to ask that question, I didn't really want that response. I didn't want that response of I'm actually not doing so great because I didn't actually set enough time to be thoughtful with that individual in front of me. So now I'm a lot more thoughtful when I ask that question to give the space so that I'm not rushing off and saying, oh, I just wanted you to say I'm good so I can go to my next meeting and I could check the box. But I realize like if you just sit there and ask the question twice and people are really trusting and they feel safe and they answer, it could lead to all those things we talked about in the beginning around retention. People really feel that they're being heard. And it's a really simple thing to ask. So thank you for that. Thank you for highlighting that. Speaking of authentic conversations, your recent Purposeful Voices campaign, you really partner as an organization with a really unique mix of individuals from folks like Jay Shetty, who we at Com know very well, who's been one of our voices and former chief purpose officer, to singer Rachel Platten, for example. And on Giving Tuesday, you'll donate 100% of all sales to the Mental Health Coalition. So, how do you, as someone, choose who to partner with, and really what stories to amplify? Because you must have so many people to choose from. How do you make that decision?
It's a good question. I've known Jay a long time, and I got to meet Rachel, and I was just so inspired and impressed by those two individuals. And I think these are two individuals that have used their platform to speak predominantly about what we're talking about well-being, and to touch people in meaningful ways, and people who are comfortable, using their voice, telling their stories to the platform of their choosing, who can do it effectively, are great. We're privileged to be able to collaborate and to partner with them to the degree, or just give them an even bigger voice to the degree we can do that. So that's what we look to do. And I love what you do all the time. This is that in a kind of in its own way. This is an extraordinary platform that gives voice to so many important messengers.
Thank
So
you. Yeah, I often tell people I'm one of the most stressed out CEOs that are out there today because every second of every day, someone is relying on us. We've had the privilege of being downloaded almost over 180 million times in 91 countries today. And so it is something when I take a step back, you kind of realize the impact that you're making, but you also realize that you have so much more to go and that the problem is so much larger. Like you said, it's, while it may feel like we've impacted a lot of people, there's so many more people out there that need help. And so it's organizations like yourself and what you're doing, amplifying voices. It's like our own and others that need to really work together. You said something in the beginning, and you used this quote, and it became a title for your book. It's not just what you stand in, it's what you stand for. And it was the title of your first book about 20 years ago. And a philosophy that I feel that has defined your entire career. What have you learned about that relationship? And can you tell us more about that meaning, about standing in for something and standing for something?
I used to struggle. I used to work tirelessly, and to be successful in most careers is, and you probably know this better than anybody, it's not never a 40-hour work week, and you never can just turn it on and turn it off. And there's very few people I know that know how to do that. I shouldn't say no one can, but some people can, I guess. I never could. So, and I was living with it, and it was part of who I was. And I realized that I needed to make this about more than just making money, because it was overall consuming me. And I was compromising my personal health in some cases. I was
Mm.
compromising my social life. I was compromising my family's life at different points in time. And it just needed to be more meaningful than just about how much money we can make. And and that was kind of I think underneath a lot of this. And if I could do that, then all of a sudden it all comes full circle, and it would all make more sense. And I think that's something I set out to do earlier on. I mean, I don't take what I do that seriously, but I do it wholeheartedly, and I bring all of myself to it. And I don't think you can really be all that successful today doing anything unless you do that, and you're going to have to prioritize certain things in your life. But making a difference, part of the journey, the destination, I say to young people all the time, if you can make that part of the journey, the destination is so much more rewarding, both professionally, personally, financially, and it's okay, and it's celebrated by so many people in an even greater way if you can do it. So it's just part of what I do. It's part of what we've done, and I feel so fortunate that I've been able to make it part of the business. And I ran a public company for years, and I used to have shareholders who would say to me, "Well, is it really right for you to be using shareholder dollars to invest in these social issues and maybe even political issues?" And I said, first of all, nothing I talk about is political. They're issues that have been politicized, but they're not political issues. They're health issues, they're human rights issues, social justice issues. And frankly, I was doing it before you bought your shares, and I'll probably be doing it, and I'll be doing it after you sell them. So, and it's who the brand is, and you knew that. You knew that when you came along. So I decided at a certain point to go private and not have to deal with the public scrutiny and oversight. Not that many years ago, and but it's been a very much defining part of who I am today and what the brand has become, for better or for worse.
Well, thank you for that. As we start to wrap here, unfortunately, because I could just keep doing this for a very long time, but I know we're limited here on time. I want to talk to you about sleep. And we talk here at COM a lot about the importance of sleep. And you spent decades in these high pressure worlds of not only fashion, but activism. Industries that at times can be not known for respecting boundaries of rest. What is your personal relationship with sleep, and how do you protect your own mental health while, doing all of this work?
I've said to each of my daughters at different points, um, I ask one favor. I want you to recommend two books for me to read.
Hmm,
And
I love that.
one of them at one point actually was Katie again, but she said, Why We Sleep. And this was maybe 6, 7 years ago. And I
Hmm,
have to tell you that book in many ways has changed me.
hmm.
And I realized, and I set my alarm when I go to sleep. And I forget sometimes it's because I automatically will wake up in the morning, but I won't automatically go to sleep. And it will remind me to go to sleep because I do function better when I'm rested. And I think we all do. I think we're cognitively more at our best. We're healthier. We're sharper. So sleep is very important to me. And
Well, that's a great that's a
it
great
wasn't for years.
recommendation.
It
That's a
wasn't
great
for years.
recommendation for all of our listeners here in terms of turning an alarm on.
I do sleep more. I take it seriously.
Kenneth, if someone is listening right now and they're struggling with their mental health and maybe feeling a little bit ashamed, a little bit afraid to talk about it, what would you recommend, or what message do you have for them?
I think that you're not dealing with anything that millions around you aren't also dealing with. And I think that just accept it, come to terms with it, own it. People ask me sometimes if I have any regrets, and they are often frustrated when I say no, because there's a million things I'd do differently if I were to do them again, but I have no regrets because everything I've done is created who I am today, and I own it, I accept it, I move on, I try to be better every day than I was the day before, and I accept things, to the degree I'm able. It's harder, in the bigger political universe than it is sometimes in my personal world, but to accept things and try to make them better every day. And I focus on things I can affect. I don't focus on things I can't.
Yeah, great
And
advice.
it's part of what this campaign is. Take it personally. I mean, encouraging people to share what they do and how they struggle, how they share, how they talk about and deal with their individual crises and or circumstances.
So before we wrap here, I end every episode with a rapid fire style three last questions. And so, what's something about you that might surprise people?
My first job was selling peanuts at Shea Stadium.
Oh, that's good. I would not have called that out. Okay, this is rapid
But
fire.
but
I
the
keep going.
point of the point of that, just whatever is that I did what I loved, and I loved baseball. I loved the time in the New York Mets. I just should know differently today, but I should have learned my lesson. But I did what I loved, and I figured out how to make money doing it.
You inspire so many. Who inspires you?
My daughters, Emily, Amanda, Katie, and my wife Maria is amazing, and she does so much more than I do, and she figures out how to make it all make sense, and she helps me, and she helps us all do what we do, and makes us all better at what we do.
Hmm, lovely. And finally, what is your favorite way to recharge, Kenneth Cole?
I sometimes go within myself, and I almost always agree with myself, but I will, I'll do, uh, I'll get lost in a Sudoku, or maybe I'll go play golf or I'll go fish, but I'll figure out how to remove myself physically if it's not mentally from where I am at a moment in time.
Ah, I love it. So, everyone, as we wrap here, please, for all of our listeners here and subscribers, please visit the mentalhealthcoalition.org. You can there access the resource library of over 500 plus mental health resources and check out How Are You Really in terms of their platform. And while you're at it, go ahead and buy yourself a new pair of shoes too as well. Kenneth,
You
just
can
have to
change,
say
you can change your outfit, you can outfit change, or both.
thank you again for joining us here today and for your decades of courage from AIDS activism to your mental health advocacy, which we sorely need all over the world. Your work and your continuous work to change this cultural conversation around stigma is truly inspiring. and to make vulnerability a strength and to prove to businesses that really the social impact could go hand in hand is truly transformative. Thank you all for listening today. And as always, you can please subscribe to our channel so you can catch all our great episodes of Recharge. Take care of yourselves, and we'll see you next time. Thanks again.
Thank you, Dave.